After the dust had settled, and the occupants of the Kushan mothership had begun to come to terms with the finality of the glass remains of Kharak, and with the elimination of most of their race, Kharak, the leader of the Kushan survivors, set about a plan that would send them across the cosmos in search of their new home, Hiigara. Following the waypoints that were provided on the map that was found on the surface of Kharak, Kharak set course for a place known as the Great Wastelands, out beyond the confines of their old homeworld, in a bid to gather resources to build up a more substantial military force. The mothership entered the system, and crews from the civilian mining detail began searching for ore-rich asteroids and stellar gases. During this time, the mothership began large-scale production of many of the now famous military vessels that cut their teeth in the First Taidani War. The following is two such vessels that proved themselves in the coming months, and many were made from the pebbles and gas clouds that formed this region of space. The Blade-class interceptor, originally designed and put into service during the early stages of the deployment of the mothership, was an extremely advanced design for its time, employing technology salvaged from the wrecks of ancient vessels on the planet Kharak. The Blade was originally based on the successful Arrow-class reconnaissance vessel, with a similar chassis, yet better armed, protected, and generally better suited to combat roles. As a result, the Blade's engine array was massively overpowered and was prone to exploding during early trials. Early versions of the Blade-class interceptor were also unreliable. Versions 1 and 2 of the Blade were deemed too costly, and the decision was made to take out some of the original features of the Blade in order to make the vessel a reliable choice in air-to-air engagements. As mission creep set in with the design team of the Blade, somehow, after all the problems of the first two models, versions 3 and 4 were even more advanced, and as such even more prone to failure, and crucially, even more expensive. The later test models of this interceptor were capable of atmospheric flight and were faster than the Arrow class, features not needed, and making it even more unpredictable. It is worth noting that test pilots of the third and fourth iteration of the Blade class interceptor were labelled bomb jockeys due to the reputation the Blade had with killing many of its test pilots. Kushan officials were starting to become wary of the Blade class interceptor, playing with the idea of scrapping the project altogether and looking for an interceptor design that would be more accommodating to their needs. As discussions were had on cutting funding to the Blade project, a single engineer and test pilot worked on a single Blade to make it the fighter that we know today as the Widowmaker of many a Taidan pilot. This duo cut away many of the unnecessary parts of the Blade, taking off the original wingtips and adding additional insulation to the hull to deal with the stress of high-speed flight. They also set about the taming of the engine suite of the Blade, toning down its performance to serviceable levels. The result was a vessel that, although slower than the first version, was better suited for its role. The Kushan finally had an interceptor that had high performance and was reliable. This version of the Blade was seen by Kushan officials, and the decision was immediately made to put it into full service. The Blade, over the course of the First Taidani War, entered a reputation to be equal, if not superior, to most of its equivalents in rival fleets, and was involved in almost every engagement in that war, sinking its teeth into countless Taidani and Turanic vessels. The Cavalier was a design spurned by the salvage of Turanic raider vessels. During the first encounter with Turanic raiders at the wreck of the Kar Selim, it was observed that Turanic combat tactics included the use of larger corvette-sized vessels alongside their fighter models. These corvettes were either armed with missile pods or projectile weaponry in casemates to the sides of these vessels. These vessels were particularly effective at supporting Turanic fighter models in dealing with rival strikecraft or adding a heavier punch to hit larger targets. Kushan Military Command saw the value in vessels like these and swiftly set about the design of a comparable Kushan vessel. In short order, the Cavalier was born, inspired by the designs of pirate vessels. It had a single medium caliber projectile cannon, chin mounted in a turret configuration. The premise of the Cavalier was to support the blades in strikecraft interception, with this single weapon configured to track high-speed vessels at the cost of a more substantial punch to the weapon itself. Its chassis was much larger than the blade, and as a result, this vessel struggled to keep up with its fellow strikecraft. This, although was not helpful to their pilots, was a catalyst to develop different tactics in the use of these types of vessels, where the Cavaliers and other later vessels that used the corvette chassis would take a more defensive approach in their deployment. As a result, the Cavalier found favour in protecting resource collectors against fast-moving strikecraft. Although not as adept at this task as the blade was, it was a more cost-effective solution, with the Cavalier's increased protection and more powerful weapon suite. As the war opened up to include more advanced designs, the Cavalier was relegated to protect Samtel resource operations, the more offensive AOs being operated by its better armed and armoured brethren, using a similar chassis. Although quickly surpassed by the heavy corvette and multi-gun corvette, the Cavalier was an important stepping stone in Kushan ship construction that paved the way for more ambitious designs, using its venerable chassis as a base. As Kushan production began, the mothership detected a large hyperspace signature not indicative of vessels so far encountered. This contact was the Bentusi. Although initial thoughts that this signal was a threat, as the Bentusi vessel approached the mothership, caution was used and the Kushan sent out a diplomatic vessel to establish contact with the Bentusi. The Bentusi took aboard the Kushan welcoming party and gifted them an information exchange, one in the form of a device that would allow them to trade some of the valuable resources in this area in exchange for advanced technology. It seemed that for the first time in Kushan history, they had encountered a race of aliens that did not want to kill them. In fact, the Bentusi received the Kushan, welcoming them to the galaxy and warning them of a tyrannic raider presence in the area. The Bentusi departed, having exchanged valuable resources with the Kushan in exchange for ion accelerators, a powerful beam weapon able to deal heavy damage to large vessels. As the Bentusi departed, the tyrannic raiders set about the Kushan fleet. Again, their arrogance and thirst for violence attracted them like moths to the flame. A single large vessel was being used in this engagement to back up tyrannic strikecraft deployment. This was a vessel that had been encountered at the Karsalim wreck, and it was deemed that this raiding party was the ones who had killed their colleagues, warranting no mercy. Kushan strikecraft fought running battles around the mothership with the assist of new frigate-class vessels, either repairing damaged hulls or gifting their guns to the fight. As the Kushan began to gain leverage on the battle, pushing tyrannic forces back from the mothership and towards their own base of operations, the tyrannic raiders deployed their own frigate-class vessels in a bid to destroy the mothership. They came through hyperspace doorways, right on top of the mothership, and began raking it with supercharged ion beams, dealing heavy damage. Although hard hitting, these vessels had no defence against strikecraft or boarding parties, and were swept aside one by one as they desperately fought to destroy the mothership. With the bulk of tyrannic forces swept aside, lacing this place with the detritus of their charred remains, the Kushan set about the remaining tyrannic forces centred around their carrier, which they were using as a base of operations. In quick order, the remaining tyrannic forces were turned to ash, and their carrier followed suit in short order. The Kushan had once again succeeded, and the mothership, their entire race, for now, was safe. Recovering their lost comrades, rebuilding their losses, and learning from this encounter, the mothership once more opened the doorway to the in-between and departed for the next location on their journey. Thank you for the watch. I would like to thank the official members of the channel, David Gate, Soccer Litania, Spitto 5, Ministry of Magic Department of Mysteries, Patrick Green, The Wandering Reapers Gaming Community, Commander Omega 88, Alex Simon, Mol Olsen, and Admiral Deathbane. If you would like to become an official backer of the channel and get some exclusive content in the members section, then follow the link in the description. If you would like to leave a one-off donation and get your name mentioned in the video, follow the Ko-fi link, also in the description. Please make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. It helps massively, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Until next time, Commanders. 07.